Dennis Reyman is a lifelong farmer in northwestern Iowa. He grew up on a Century farm in Woodbury County, and he still farms in that region today. He's also a partner at Stalcup Agricultural Services in Storm Lake, Iowa. So he grew up on a farm, he still farms as an adult, and he has sold more than 100 farms in Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota during his professional career. Bottom line, farms have been this guy's life. Hi, I'm Dave Price. This week, Dennis shares who is buying farmland, what a realistic third crop could be for his home state, and what this country's skyrocketing federal debt means for agricultural support in the future. Let's start with how Dennis began his time on the farm. Well, hello, Dennis. This has been something I've wanted to have for a while, so I appreciate you joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, good to be on with you, Dave.
Awesome. All right. You have lived and breathed this stuff literally your entire life, from the womb to now, right?
That is very true. Yes, it is.
Hey, talk a little bit about growing up, though. Growing up on the farm. I grew up on a Century farm. What are your memories of that?
Yeah, I did. I grew up on a farm in the northeastern corner of Woodbury County, so about 35 miles straight east of Sioux City and just a couple miles south of US Highway 20. So my great grandfather, I guess, emigrated there from Clinton County in 1891 and bought the farm just to the north of where I grew up and then added the farm where I grew up 10 years later. So that was in 1901. And so we've had it. Now my brother lives there and owns it. So, it's been in our family for what now? 135 years or 125, I guess, where he lives. So yeah, so that was the Reyman side. My mother's family, my grandmother on my mother's side actually grew up across the section from the Reymans.
Mhm.
And then my mom grew up where I live, and that's 4 miles away. And so I had a lot of aunts, uncles, great aunts, great uncles, cousins, second cousins, just the whole gamut on both sides of the family, really within about a 5 to say less than 10-mile radius. So yeah, it goes way back.
So and are you still helping your brother with the farm then?
No, we're separate.
Okay.
I've got my own farming operation in addition to what I do here at Stalcup Ag Service, and so yeah, I've got the typical corn, soybeans, and a few cow calf pairs, and a little CRP, a little alfalfa. So a little bit of a mix of what's in western Iowa, or most of it, really all of Iowa.
Okay, so talk about your other gig. How did you get to that point?
My other gig being this gig.
That gig, yeah.
Well, yes, that's right. Stalkup Ag Service is really my main job, and that's where I'm sitting right now. But we're in Storm Lake, Iowa, which is squarely in the center of northwest Iowa. Uh, Mr. H.E. Buck Stalcup was a VOAG teacher in Indiana. He was a Purdue grad. I think he graduated Purdue in 1925, taught VOAG until 1935, and then took a job with Connecticut Mutual Life Insurance Company. And they were, as you recall, that was the midst of the Great Depression.
Hmm.
A lot of farms had been financed and then repossessed, I guess, by the insurance companies. A law came into effect that they could only hold those farms in ownership for 2 years. And so his job was to come out here and disperse the ownership, sell those farms off. And he had about, I think, 120 or 30 farms that he was in charge of selling around the four-state area. So up into Minnesota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, as well as Iowa. And as he got that job done over the course of several years, and of course they could write the financing on that too. So it was really a pretty good deal. And he had one of the few jobs Connecticut Mutual paid a not only a salary but a commission type
Hmm.
of deal. So I guess that was one of the few non-salary jobs. So he did well, and he bought several of the final farms in his inventory north of Storm Lake here for himself, and his daughter still maintains ownership on those farms. So
How
we
about that?
manage him. So great history. He started this company in 1942 as a one-man shop. He brought in a partner in, about 51 or so, and then added another several partners in the 60s, and then formed this into a partnership, and so it's continued, and so we all get to participate in ownership of the company.
Uh, one of the things that I really looked forward to talking to you about is because you have both feet in what's happening. And by that, I mean you're still actively farming. So let's put your left
Yeah.
foot on that side of things. So you know all of the good, bad, and the ugly of that side, right? And
Yeah.
obviously you grew up with it. I'm going to argue you have 3 feet in this, I guess, because you have the family history too. But from the professional management side, then you also know all the trends and what's going on. And you watch, you manage 3 states, is that right? You have farmland in 3 states?
Yeah, I guess I have, of course, mostly in Iowa, but
Sure.
a little bit into Nebraska and South Dakota as well. Yeah.
Okay, so you get to see things from both way, and I love it that you're still in corn and bean, so you can see the joys and the headaches that come with that with
Yeah.
that as well. So when somebody stops you in the grocery store right now and they say, "Dennis, how are things?" How do you answer that question?
Same way I always answer it. It varies. From my perspective, it's so variable, and so
Hmm.
that's really about the way I have to answer it from my perspective. But then I
Hmm.
try to, drill down to really kind of what they're considering, and in my area in Woodbury County in particular, we had really good yields this year. Last year, we've had a nice streak. Now, 2 years ago, we were quite dry. We were actually the driest county in 23, and I think the only county in Iowa that triggered an ARC payment, which is the farm program payment based on the county level, and we were the only county to be poor enough, I guess, to
Yeah.
trigger a payment. So, but yeah, generally we've had a nice stretch where I'm at now. You go east of Storm Lake, and and you're into the glacial soils instead of the wind-blown lush soils. And so you've got different drainage issues and things. But this year was, I would call it a good year, but not a great year. We had a great year to the west, a good year to the east. And so when you're in tight margins like this, boy, that has a dramatic impact on your profits and the amount of money that you're retaining in your bank accounts.
So for the folks, for your clients, where's their measure their level of optimism? What are they thinking?
I remind them to always be optimistic
Hmm.
because we're in agriculture, and I believe it's the greatest place to be.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my take on it. But and so maybe they're reticent on being negative too. But uh, you know, I think that they certainly understand that we're in a cyclical business. And, when times were good, 2020, 21, 22 into 23, there was actually about a 3-year stretch there that was really quite fantastic in the corn and soybean sector.
Hmm.
And, when we get into those cycles, we had that 10 to 15 years ago as well. And I always remind them this is cyclical. It's not going to last. We're at the good part of the cycle. So plan accordingly. And, I think you have to do that as a responsible farm manager, um, as an asset manager, because we know we're going to come into these down cycles, and so just be a little bit prepared.
So this is going to be an oddball way to phrase this, I suppose, but as I always say on this, that I'm coming from the outside, not growing up on the farm as you and many others have here, but you were talking about previous yields. Are we to a point that because of our ability to mass produce as well as we do, the hope for a lot of folks is I need my yields to be good, but others to be not so much?
Well, I think that's always been the case. And, somewhere somebody, kind of takes the hit.
Yeah,
So we don't really, really overproduce. Now, this year we had a 17 billion bushel corn crop, which was easily the largest we've ever
yeah,
produced. But, the other side of the story is our demand, our usage is also very good. And so we use our carryover is, I don't know, 2.2, 2.3 billion. And so the ratio on that is really not terribly far out of whack, certainly not outside the average range. So we have to focus on that as well. And exports is a big part of that. I see a lot of commentary, about why do we grow things that people don't want? Well, they do, they want it, they need it. We use it up as in this country and in the world. So our exports are by far a record for corn. We're like 3.2 billion bushels of exports. That's really quite significant. Um, Soybeans, soybean carryover is reasonably tight, I believe. We were at 290 million. That expanded to 350 million. That's still not a burdensome carryover, and especially if we've got South America now as an equal
yeah.
producer of what we are, and maybe does exceed us slightly. So you've got that um, dynamic in there, and exchange rates and everything play into it as well. So our marketing seasons that we used to look at are different than they used to be. But yeah, it's. I think that we have opportunities for things to improve, and they are slightly, very slightly trending upward. Corn and soybean prices need to go a lot more, but yeah, it's at least we're not completely in the tank like we could be.
So is it domestically where we're going to have to absorb this realistically because of that South American competition?
Yeah, I think so. And on the export market, we are working hard, I believe, at developing more customers, a wider array
Hmm.
of clients. So I know Southeast Asia in general, outside of China, is one focus point. They've also worked pretty hard, I think, on India. The demographics of India are great as far as that goes, but the society of India makes it a little harder to maybe do some business there. But they're gaining, they're making progress. But yeah, domestically, you know, um, this 45Z regulation is potentially a huge deal where we're going to continue to emphasize making renewable fuels, particularly soy diesel, and that has applications in airlines and basically across the board. It's potentially huge, and that could use up all the soybeans we've got plus some. Now, and then people get into, well, why are we using a food crop
For fuel.
for fuel? Well, when you crush a soybean and get oil out of it, and that's what goes into the fuel process. And then you get the meal part, which is a residual item, but that's what we feed livestock with. So we get it's the best of both worlds. People need to remember that. Same thing on ethanol. You crush corn and make it into ethanol. You get a byproduct called distiller's grain, and that is basically 3 times the protein content of the original kernel of corn. And man, it's palatable. The cattle just love it. They'll run to it. And so it's we are, and you get about a third of it back. And so the protein swap is more or less equal. So it's really, we've got a great story. We just need to continue to promote it.
Your examples there, I think, illustrate where outsiders can be naive about this, that I think there's a running joke from some of the folks that I've met in the ag community about, I mean, farmers are cheap by their nature, right? They're thrifty. They're thrifty. I don't want cheap
Yeah.
to come down as a cut down, but they're thrifty. You're going to maximize what you have. And so for soy and corn especially, you're going to try to maximize the potential of all of that, right? Like every single possible use that best fits. You're not going to want to just throw a bunch of it to the side. You're going to look for wherever technology can take this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got hopes, and I've had this hope for a long time that somehow we can make a biodegradable plastic material out of corn, soybeans, what have you, that
Hmm.
will replace chemical plastics. And if you look at the amount of chemical waste in the world, it's kind of depressing.
Hmm.
But I hope that I don't know how much research is going into that area, but I see that as a potentially a great thing.
Tough to compete against big oil. They got a lot of money.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, they dwarf us, but hopefully we can move that direction.
Okay, so I know you pay attention to politics, and I know you know the Iowa delegation. So you've got, and the way Iowa is structured, all Republicans, both the U.S. senators and the four members of the U.S. House, they are all big supporters of year-round E15. They all will talk about the need for a new farm bill. I don't even know if you remember. There was a time they used to do timely farm bills. We may have to go back in history.
Yeah, you do have to go back.
Rather than just extend, extend, extend. But
Yeah.
does that drive you bonkers? I appreciate that you're saying, you try to tell your clients, hey, be patient here, be optimistic, all those kind of things. But don't you lose your mind when you know some of these things, the potential of what these could bring the industry, and Congress is unable, whatever the reason is, to kind of move forward on this in a timely fashion, even with one party control, largely.
Well, yeah, it's frustrating for sure. I wouldn't say I lose my mind, but I
Well,
do.
yeah, yeah, you're pretty even keel.
Yeah, yeah. I well, you learn to be that way eventually, but uh I've got clients that occasionally will call and be a little bit excited about something or other. And you know, this farm bill thing, 84% of farm bill spending in total is for food assistance
Right,
programs, SNAP,
right.
and that type of thing. And I believe that was a genius move. A lot of people will say, geez, they ought to break that apart. But that's how you get things done in Congress. Out of 435 congressmen, there's not that they all have some sort of agriculture, I think, at least in the form of food. So you have
In their
to
district, you mean back
in
home?
their district,
Hmm.
yes, yes. They may not have production agriculture. They may be totally urban, but they all have food needs, and so that's how you get a farm bill done. And I was in D.C. back in 2014, I believe, and Frank Lucas from Oklahoma was the chairman of the House Ag Committee, and he made the comment, and this is quite amazing, I thought. He said of the 435 Congress people at that time, the previous farm bill was in '08, and half of those Congress people had not voted on the '08 farm bill. So the
Mm,
2014 farm bill was going to be brand new
brand new.
legislation to half of them. We don't think about that much turnover, but that was his comment. And I thought he provided good leadership to get the job done. And it continues to be challenging. I think in the 2018 farm bill, they actually broke those two apart and passed the nutrition legislation separate from the farm legislation. And that it worked, but I don't know that that's a good route to the future.
Where do you see things going with that in light of the fact that you've got some of the more budget hawk types who are looking at a $38 trillion continuing debt for our country and saying, all right, we got to look at what we're putting toward everything here. Is that going to put some of these ag programs in jeopardy?
Yeah, good question. When you look at the overall debt and you look at how much of that is mandatory spending,
Hmm.
there isn't a lot of room for adjustment in the non-mandatory. It's kind of a small piece of the pie. And sorry to bring up pie, Dave, but
Man, we can
but
talk about pie any day of the week.
yeah, but the and ag falls into the non. I think most of ag falls into non-mandatory. I guess I'm not sure about some of the nutrition stuff, but um, yeah, crop. What we are really concerned about in Western Iowa, from a farm bill perspective, is crop insurance
Hmm.
and conservation, particularly CRP spending. Those are the two that really hit home with us. Now, crop insurance was enhanced under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And so we're starting now. This is crop insurance season. We have to make that decision for this year by March 15th. So we're starting to digest, what the options are. And it's a good bill, or it's a good program, and it's been enhanced. So the one thing that they don't do in DC, there's years where the premiums are higher than what the payouts are, but that doesn't get credited to crop insurance. It just goes into the general fund, and it's never reported that, well, crop insurance was actually profitable for the
Yeah.
government this year. So I would like to see that happen, but they generally don't ask me for any input.
They should. They should. Will you talk about what are you seeing in your region? Who's buying, who's selling, who's holding, expanding? Are you seeing some kind of trends?
Well, yeah, as far as land ownership, the trends are kind of the same as they usually are, and that
Okay.
is that the most of the buyers are farmers, and that would be farmers within, say, a 6 to 10 mile radius. That is usually where your lead bidders are going to come from, and it's kind of always been maybe 70 to 80% of the land buyers are farmers from the general neighborhood. And that really doesn't change much. I've seen you can go, it'll vary by neighborhood, of course. If you've got a really strong, say, especially a livestock intensive neighborhood, the farmers are going to buy most of that land, maybe nearly all of it. But those prices are going to be higher too. I mean, that's where you see the $20,000
Hmm.
plus land sales, is that goes in hand with livestock almost always. And in the other areas, we did see an influx of number of years ago of 1031 exchanges when the housing boom was going on in the 2000s, and a lot of development money, say from Omaha, Des Moines, they would 1031 exchange that money out of their land that they had sold, and buy land up here. And they fit into the investor category, but really a lot of those people were pretty retired farmers, are pretty closely tied to farms. So that's what I categorize most of the investors that come into this area. You do have some outside, truly investor types,
Hmm.
but most of the investors would be local type people. And maybe they've moved somewhere else, but they grew up on the farm. They're buying somewhere in their general vicinity of where they grew up.
And are you seeing this dynamic that we're seeing in some other areas where the demand has stayed more consistent for the higher quality, whereas lower quality may be a little, I don't know if stagnant's the right word, but just not driving that same kind of interest right now?
Yeah, the old saying is that you pay for a good farm once,
Hmm.
and that always remains true. Those premium farms, those top quality farms, they're always going to sell well, and we generally try to steer them toward public auction because the public will respond well, and you may just come down to having two bidders, but there's other people that didn't show their hand because the bidding may have outpaced where they wanted to
Where
show
they
their
wanted to go.
yeah, yeah. But when you get into a lower quality farm, and lower quality could be soil type, it could be configuration, it could be drainage. There's a number of factors that would make a lower quality farm. And that's where you're going to see people maybe back off. Maybe the next door neighbor says, "Well, I can make that work. It's right next to me. I pull the
Hmm.
fence out and go."
Yeah.
But it takes two to make an auction work, and so you've always got to consider that as well. So yeah, those lower quality farms, they'll ring the bell just as well as a high quality farm in the good times, in the go-go times. But you get into it more of a time like now where it's a little slower. Those farms will be the first ones to shorten up a little bit.
I'd like to hit you with a deeper one that I bring up frequently on this, and I always feel like I have to put a caveat on this, that just to remind that I come with an outsider's view on all of this. But because of your your life of growing up on the farm and still staying connected with corn and beans, and then of course in your region managing so many farms with dealing with corn and beans, do you see a future where we can keep as many folks in those corn and soybean industries as we do? Or I guess because I've been reading a lot about South America and the competition of what that could potentially bring in the future, are we going to have to maybe help persuade some folks to get out of corn and beans and get into other things because the marketplace globally has just changed so much?
Oh, that's a possibility. Of course, all things change over time. Usually,
Sure.
sometimes our lifetime isn't enough time to, show what the change is. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, that's a possibility. If the Southern Hemisphere can, really ramp up more acres and more production, maybe our lesser quality areas change into something else. The market will dictate where it goes. And, but if we cannot be competitive on some acres, those acres will find something else to do. I think, as long as our climate is favorable to Iowa, I see Iowa, maintaining, maintaining its dominance in corn and soybeans. We've got the infrastructure, we're set up to handle that. I occasionally have heard comments that, well, these guys are asleep. They don't want to grow anything but corn and beans. Well,
Hmm.
it's what we do best. It's what we're set up to do. So, let's go with it. Could we have a third crop? What is our third crop? I suppose alfalfa. And that's a nice crop if you're set up to deal with it. It takes a whole nother line of machinery, and you should have some storage if that's a cash crop, and you need a market for it. So these are the challenges that you have with finding a good third crop alternative.
And you've got alfalfa, right, on yours?
Yeah, I do. I've got a little bit of alfalfa because I've got a small cow herd, not
Hmm.
small cows, but small in number.
Yeah. And they
But
like to eat.
yeah, they like to eat. I don't have pasture, so they are in a yard, most of the time, and so I've got to have a feed source, and I don't want to be subject to buying all of it, so I've got some ground in alfalfa, and I like what it does agronomically, for the soil. It's
Hmm.
generally a 4-year crop, so you seed it and then it sits there and it isn't tilled at all for 4 years, and it's a legume, so it fixes nitrogen in the soil, which is used by the follow-up corn crops. And it does a lot for weed control. You go out, you cut that crop 4 times a year, and once that crop's established, weeds don't really compete with it. So it's got some real benefits.
All right, so as we close here, we're talking to you in mid-February. What are you, as you look ahead to the rest of 2026, what piques your curiosity? This isn't, you've been around the block a few times, so you know how to watch trends and you know what fascinates you and you know what to watch for. So what are you watching for?
Well, I'm watching for a moderate breakout to the upside on grains, and we're slightly trending that way. But I think, you could see, and of course, we'd always be assisted by weather problems that could, derail production a little bit. But I also see a lot on the demand side. I'm really, if I'm looking at one thing, I'm looking for how the demand side develops through the rest of this year, whether it's through exports, but mainly through domestic. And of course, renewable diesel and E15 would be the main drivers. And we've used E15 in Iowa for years. I've
Hmm.
burned ethanol for, I think, since 1982. So I never had an issue with it, I guess. So, I'm very positive toward that type of usage.
Dennis, it's always good to catch up with you and look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
You bet. Thank you, Dave. Been fun.
You might have noticed that Dennis brought up pie. That is no coincidence when he and I talk. Dennis and I have served as pie judges in the same pie contest that Iowa businesswoman Jamie Built has sponsored each year at the Iowa State Fair in honor of her grandmother. So we get to sample a bunch of different berry pies at the fair over the summer. Not a bad way to spend the day. Now, you might not find a lot of stories about pies in our weekly American Farmland Owner newsletter, but you will find features with thought leaders like Dennis and many others as we explore trends, opportunities, and challenges for farmland owners, operators, and investors. We hope you will check it out right now at AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.